William Shakespeare is generally considered the greatest playwright who ever lived, as well as one of the finest poets in English. Even today, 400 years after his death, he remains the most popular playwright in the world. Shakespeare lived in England during a time known as the Renaissance, when art and literature were flourishing, but many people couldn't read. Shakespeare wrote for everyone. Both the rich and the poor, the educated and the illiterate gathered together to see and enjoy his plays. Shakespeare has been part of American culture since English-speaking people first settled on this continent. And as this program shows, his work remains very much alive in this country. But in an age of easy entertainment, some people think Shakespeare's work is too difficult, somehow beyond their reach or not worth the effort. The National Endowment for the Arts agrees with another English playwright, Ben Jonson, who was both a friend and a rival of Shakespeare's. Jonson wrote that Shakespeare was not of an age, but for all time. The National Endowment for the Arts is working to spread an understanding and appreciation of Shakespeare in American communities, so that he remains not only for all time, but for everyone.
Mr. Golding, Mr. James, would either of you care to name one of Shakespeare's poems for me?
I thought he wrote movies.
Two households, both alike in dignity.
By the pricking of my thumbs, something wicked this way comes.
Oh, monstrous. Oh, strange. Fly masters, we are haunted!
Doubt that the stars are fire. Doubt that the sun doth move. Doubt truth to be a liar. But never doubt I love.
They have made worms meat of me. A plague unbound your houses! Your houses!
Film directors have been putting William Shakespeare's work on screen almost as long as movies have been around. He's one of the most successful writers Hollywood has ever known.
But Shakespeare never wrote a screenplay, never saw a camera, a microphone, or bright lights. He lived some 400 years ago in England, and he wrote his dramas for the stage.
The stage is still where most actors play Shakespeare's roles. And let me tell you, the thrill and terror of performing Shakespeare in front of a live audience never go away.
The terror is for actors to deal with. But the thrill of a live, great play is something actors and audiences experience together.
Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him.
You can find performances of Shakespeare everywhere today. You never know where Shakespeare's work will pop up. Modern writers and directors are constantly adapting his plays to new settings and time periods.
Dost thou say so?
She did deceive her father, marrying you, and when she seemed to shake and fear your looks, she loved them most.
And so she did.
Hey, man, my girl's not like that, dogs.
But just think about the way she played her father when he found out about you and her.
People quote Shakespeare's words in stories, poems, speeches, songs, and more.
Let it be, to be or not to be. MC Hobbs on the job, ripping rhymes like...
Dozens of artists have portrayed scenes from Shakespeare in their paintings. Opera companies perform them in song, and not always in English.
Shakespeare is all around us.
How did his work become such an important part of our culture and our imaginations? Who was this guy? During Shakespeare's lifetime, England was fast emerging from the Middle Ages. Its economy was growing. Its merchant ships traded with far-off lands. Middle-class families were finding new ways of making money, improving their lives, and rising in English society. Scholars agree that William Shakespeare was born in 1564 in Stratford-upon-Avon, a town about 100 miles from London. Shakespeare had a fairly comfortable upbringing, with access to books and a good education. At age 18, he married Anne Hathaway, 26 years old and expecting their first child. The couple would have 3 children together. Not much about Shakespeare's early life is certain until 1592, when it's known he was in London, acting and writing plays. He had joined a troupe of performers at a time when the theater was just becoming an established profession in the city.
England's first permanent building for stage performances opened in London just a few years before Shakespeare came to town. It had only the most basic features of theaters we know today. Plays depended almost entirely on what actors could do with words and gestures on stage. The 1998 movie Shakespeare in Love portrays some of the agonies that Shakespeare and his company may have endured as they prepared for performance.
2 households.
We're lost.
No, it will turn out well.
How will it?
I don't know. It's a mystery.
It is a mystery. With only minimal scenery, no lighting except what the sun or candles could provide, and no way of amplifying their voices, Shakespeare and his fellow players were able to fill a theater with magic.
Sir, 2 households, both alike in dignity. In fair Verona, where we lay our scene. From ancient grudge break to new mutiny, where civil blood makes civil hands unclean. From forth the fatal loins of these 2 foes, a pair of star-crossed lovers take their life, whose misadventured, piteous overthrows doth with their death bury their parents' strife.
Performances in Shakespeare's day were different in some other ways from the modern theater we know. For instance, it was considered morally unacceptable then for women to appear on stage, so all women's roles were performed by boys. Shakespeare mocked the peculiar conventions of the Elizabethan theater in many of his plays.
Kiss me through the whole of this vile wall. I kiss the wall's hole, not your lips at all.
Why, I can smile.
Characters often spoke their thoughts aloud.
And murder while I smile.
In soliloquies.
Wet my cheeks with artificial tears and frame my face to all occasions.
And in what we call asides, sometimes spoke directly to the audience.
And therefore, since I cannot prove a lover, I'm determined to prove a villain and hate the idle pleasures of these days.
Elizabethan audiences weren't shy about speaking back. The people at ground level stood for the entire performance, and by some accounts, the groundlings could be rowdy. Some individuals got so caught up in the drama on stage, they felt moved to participate.
I do remember well where I should be, and there I am. Where is my Romeo? Dead!
Shakespeare's plays were crowd pleasers, but he had more than the London public to satisfy. Theater companies competed for the money and favor of wealthy nobles, and of Queen Elizabeth herself, who loved the theater and sometimes had acting troupes perform for her at court. Shakespeare was judged against other talented playwrights like Ben Jonson and Christopher Marlowe, whose plays are still honored and performed today.
Not all of Shakespeare's plays were hits, but his wit and talent were recognized early in his career, and he soon developed a following. As his wealth grew, he bought a large house and other property in his hometown of Stratford. In 1599, Shakespeare's company built the Globe, the theater that would premiere some of his most famous plays. 10 days after King James I arrived in London to succeed Queen Elizabeth, he honored Shakespeare's company with the name the King's Men. The company prospered. Shakespeare's reputation was already secure, the most popular and influential playwright in English, well before his death in 1616. Today, the bust at Shakespeare's burial site in this church in Stratford looks down on many thousands of visitors every year, and reproductions of the Globe Theatre that his plays made famous regularly sell out to enthusiastic crowds. But it's the plays themselves that remain the biggest draw. Shakespeare designed them to appeal to people from all walks of life. And audiences still delight in their broad humor, subtle ideas, elegant language, twists of plot, and scenes of pure excitement.
Turn thee, Benvolio. Look upon thy death.
I do but keep the peace. Put up thy sword, or manage it to part these men with me.
What? Drawn and talk of peace? I hate the word, as I hate hell, all Montagues, and thee. Have it thee, coward! Capulet!
Shakespeare was a showman. He based his plots on well-known tales from history and stories that were popular in his day. He took liberties with the details, altering personalities and events, crafting dramas that would grip and move his audiences. His plays explore the deepest feelings, worries, convictions that people have always had. They show us honor and courage.
Once more unto the breach, dear friend! Once more! Or close the wall up with our English dead!
The plays show us delirious love.
I pray thee, gentle mortal, sing again.
And that
Mine
love
ear
can
is
sometimes
much
be a little too delirious.
So is mine eye enthralled to thy shape, and thy fair virtues, force perforce, doth move me on the first view to say, to swear, I love thee.
They show us bitter hatred and evil cunning.
I'll find a day to massacre them all and raise their faction and their family, the cruel father and his traitorous sons to whom I sued